Good afternoon, Keith Tebow from FRCmedia. Thank you for joining us again today. Time for a state legislative update. I'm pleased to be joined, as I have many times remotely here since COVID began, by our state senator in Fall River, Senator Michael Rodrigues, who's also the chair of the Senate Ways and Means Committee. Senator Rodrigues, how are you?
I'm well, Keith. How you doing?
I am doing well, hanging in there. I want to talk about a few issues as we, wrap up 2020. Last week the legislature put its final stamp on a fiscal 2021 budget, $46 billion, currently in the hands of the governor. And obviously, as chair of Ways and Means, this is pretty much one of your bread and butter issues in terms of chair of the committee. We've talked about this in the past, but how difficult was this budget process? And I guess how important it was to finally come up with a resolution, albeit about 6 months late.
Yeah, it was very difficult because we began the year. The budget process began just about a year ago, December of 2019, where we, the Senate, the House, and the administration, arrive at what's known as a consensus revenue figure, where we all try to reach agreement, and we did reach agreement on what we all agree will be the total tax revenue for fiscal year 21. We did that in December of 2019, a year ago. The third Wednesday in January, per our Constitution, the governor filed his version, his proposed budget. It was off to the races. The budget in the legislature, after the governor files his proposal, and by the way, no reflection on Governor Baker, because every governor, Democrat or Republican, their budgets are more of a political statement than a practicable document, meaning they do not have to file a balanced budget because they file their budgets based on a lot of assumptions, assuming this happens, this tax package happens, assuming these budget cuts happen. So we in the legislature cannot balance our budget based on assumptions. It has to be realities. That starts with the House, and the House was going full steam at it. And then COVID struck. Then the pandemic struck. Governor Baker issued a state of emergency on the 10th of March. All hell broke loose. Everything got shut down. We saw our tax revenues plummet. We held an economic summit in April. And again, when I use the collective we, I mean myself as chair of the Senate Committee on Ways and Means and my team, Chairman Aaron Michaelowicz, chair of the House Committee on Ways and Means and his team, and Secretary of Administration and Finance, A&F, Secretary Heffernan, he and his team on behalf of Governor Baker. We reconvened an economic roundtable in April. All of the same experts that gave us one revenue figure a few months earlier in December now said, you better shave $5 to $6 billion off that revenue figure. We said, time out. We passed a couple of interim short-term budgets. We said, let's punt this to the fall until we can get a better handle on a few things, until we can get a better handle of exactly where our economy is going to go, get a better handle of exactly what the path of this virus is going, what's the path of this virus going to be, and more certainty on what our revenues will be. Well, we're glad we did wait because we turned out in October, we had another economic roundtable, public, everybody observed, and this same group of economists again gave us a new number, and they said, don't shave $5 to $6 billion off, shave about $3.5 billion off. Mm-hmm. So we collectively agreed to a new consensus revenue number, $3.5 billion less than what we were using in the beginning of the year. The governor filed a new proposed budget. The House and Senate passed a budget based upon that new revenue number, and it now is back in the governor's court where he can line item veto. He can put his fingerprints on it if he chooses.
Yeah, in general, Senator, in terms of what is in the document, $46 billion, that's, obviously an astronomical number. But
It's a
talk
big one.
about, how some of the revenue shortfall was made up. I understand that there's some rainy day funds, some
Yep.
savings over the years that have
Yep.
been put in. Um,
Yep.
from what I understand, no broad-based tax increases. Talk about how that works out for the, general Massachusetts resident.
Certainly, yep. There are no broad-based tax increases. We balanced this budget with available funds. Um, there was a series of I'm going to say budget cuts, but really we level funded most budgets, which for those like yourself at BCC know that level funding does mean a service cut because inflation and collective bargaining agreements and the like adds to budgets every year. But we pretty much level funded every budget with some exceptions, and we can get into that. And we use one-time funds. Um, Massachusetts has a pretty healthy rainy day account, so-called stabilization fund. Over the last few years, when the economy was really, really good, because of a lot of fiscal discipline on behalf of all of my colleagues in the legislature, we were able to put a lot away in the savings account for a rainy day. Well, we know it's raining right now, so we're going to utilize about $1.7 billion from the stabilization fund, a little less than half the account of the balance, in order to balance the budget. There are also probably $1.5 billion worth of federal dollars. CARES Act, so-called, you've heard this before, Coronavirus Relief Fund, CRF money, CARES Act money, additional reimbursements, federal reimbursements on mass health and Medicaid. So there's about $1.5 billion in federal money, and then there was a series of tax shifts. I won't get into all the details, but something called accelerated sales tax, something we delayed. There was supposed to be a charitable tax deduction going into place in January. We delayed that for a year. That's a $64 million savings. So all of that allowed us to pass both the House and Senate, pass a balanced budget and send it to the governor, where the governor now can exercise his authority to make changes to it or propose changes to it.
Yeah. Something else that's important to note is this budget, we've talked about this before, is not relying on any potentially new federal stimulus funds, which may come down the pike. And every time I've talked to you about this, it was after that initial push in April and March.
Yeah.
And you've been still waiting for this and still nothing. But this budget does not
It's in
include
the
any
news
federal
today.
money at all.
It's in
Right,
the news
exactly.
today, right? You're reading in the news today about a new $908 billion plan coming down from the federal government. No, there's no new federal dollars. The federal dollars spent in this budget are federal dollars that have already been allocated to the state of Massachusetts. Nothing new. We do anticipate something happening. We've been anticipating, as you said, since May, when the House of Representatives, U.S. House of Representatives, in Congress passed what they call the HEROES Act. And then throughout the summer, every day we got a new tweet from President Trump. It's not big enough. It's too big. I'm going home. I'm not going to play. I want to play more. Never knowing. Even when he was in the hospital with COVID, he was tweeting stuff about it. So we finally threw up our hands and said, as I said earlier, we cannot balance the budget based upon assumptions. So there's no federal dollars. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Let's get into fiscal year 22 and let's deal with it then. And we're hoping to see some federal help and relief.
All right. I want to bring it down home now to Fall River specifically. What are some of the items that is in the budget that will benefit the city of Fall River? We talk a lot about local aid and funding for schools and transportation and the like. Give us a rundown on how the city of Fall River will fare under this
Absolutely.
21 budget.
I'd be happy to. I know all politics is local, and chairing the Committee on Ways and Means does give me the opportunity to put my fingerprints on the budget to help the communities that I represent, which is 7 communities around Greater Fall River. First of all, the big number, Chapter 70, education funding. We not only level funded Chapter 70, but we increased it by $108 million for an inflation factor. So Fall River got, significant more dollars than last year in Chapter 70. Their school department's very happy. Something called UGA, or Unrestricted General Government Aid, is a check, is money that the state government sends down to our local government, the City of Fall River City Council and Mayor, for them to spend on their general government responsibilities. That was level funded for FY20. I want to say I have it here somewhere, but probably in the tune of about $23 million. Then in addition to that, one of probably the most important program that I created and I established 9 years ago, and I've been pushing since then, was something called public safety staffing grants, monies that come directly to Fall River to help support our police and our fire personnel. That was fully funded in this budget. And Fall River's gotten over $7 million, received over $7 million since I created this fund in public safety grants. So I can tell you that both our police and fire chiefs are very, very relieved that money was included in the budget. And then there's organizations and programs that we support. The Children's Advocacy Center, which deals with child sexual abuse, fully funded their request at $500,000. We have monies for Safe and Successful Youth and Shannon grants that are fully funded. Monies for ball, for support in the athletic fields in Westport. The Katie Brown Education Foundation, right there at BCC, we established. Representative Sylvia actually spearheads this, but the Veterans Education Center at BCC, that received an earmark in the budget. So even though there were significant reasons to be concerned during this budget process, I can assure you that the South Coast, Greater Fall River did okay in this budget process. Yeah.
So, let's look ahead. You just finished 21. You're already looking ahead to 22. And I know a lot of the financial experts are saying, I know, especially on the local level, that, next fiscal year may actually be a little bit worse than this year, because if you, rely on that one-time money, that rainy day fund, you don't get that back. That's already been spent. So how do you preview looking ahead to 22?
We're going to take a deep breath. Next Tuesday on the 15th, I don't know when the show is, so on Tuesday the 15th, here we go again. Deja vu all over again, but we're going to reconvene our economic experts to begin trying to arrive at a consensus revenue figure for FY22. As you said, all of these one-time dollars that we used to balance fiscal year 21 are one-time dollars. We cannot spend them again. They're gone. See ya. So that creates a structural deficit. So we are entering fiscal year 22 with about a $3.5 billion structural deficit. We will hold our breath and keep an eye out on what's going to happen down in DC, hoping for some significant federal support. And we'll work together, with our friends in the House, our friends in the administration, our friends in the private sector, and we'll figure it out. And we will hopefully, in a more traditional time period, which means that the House will vote on their budget proposal in April, and the Senate will do it in May, and we'll have June to do a conference committee, and by July 1, we'll have a budget on the governor's desk. I'll be honest with you, Keith, I don't want to go through 8 more months again of what I went through this year. I mean, It was a long summer and fall. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to touch on just a couple of other quick issues before I let you go. First, police reform bill, also on the governor's desk as we speak.
Yep.
The three members of the House delegation voted no. You voted yes. Why did you vote yes on the police reform legislation?
I think it's important that that we institute new standards and credentials for our law enforcement officers. We are one of the only states in the country that does not have a separate credentialing board for our law enforcement officials. And I can understand how difficult it is. I've been around for a while, and as we create new standards, as we create new levels of accountability for any profession, and it's happened with teachers, it's happened with real estate agents, it's happened with insurance agents, it's happened with us in the legislature where we pass sweeping ethics and campaign finance legislation. Whenever you institute increased levels of accountability and standards, there's always pushback. It happens. It's natural. So I understand it's controversial, but I think it's absolutely the right thing to do. And we'll see what the governor does. I anticipate, as with the budget, he will be putting his fingerprints on some of this, but he won't veto it because, in my opinion, because a lot of the components of this bill were actually pieces of legislation that he filed.
Yeah. And finally, this will probably be the last time we speak in 2020. As I speak to people over the next week or so, I'm asking them a little bit of their imprint of what impacted them in 2020. Obviously, COVID has impacted everyone, but I guess I want to ask you individually. What was an impact for you? It could be something that you've been able to adapt to as a legislator and serving your constituents. It could be something different. So I guess what's your lasting impact of 2020?
Just off the top of my head, I think that 2020, we all learned how to act, work remotely and contribute remotely. Here we are doing a remote interview where normally we would be in your studio doing this interview. So we've all learned. Back in March, I didn't know what the hell Zoom was. I thought it was a song. My kids used to watch a show called Zoom, and I had that song in my head. It's just living. It's the new normal, which I don't think is going to change. I think that we've all come to realize that employees, my staff, can be just as productive working from home as they can working in the office. What I miss the most, though, is the personal. I'm a social animal. I like to be with people. I like to have a conversation with people. I like to break bread. You know me. It's all about the food. I like to, let's have a lunch meeting or a dinner meeting, and food makes conversations go better, I think. Very, very, I miss that a lot. I miss not having social interactions face to face with people a lot. But that will come, but it's going to be a new normal as we go forward.
Yeah. All right, Senator Michael Rodrigues, as always, thank you for your time. Have a great holiday season.
Thank you. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you and all your listening. Everybody, please. 2021 is going to be better. The vaccine's around the corner. We a week from today, the 15th, is when they expect the first vaccines to be entering the state. So,
yeah, something to look forward to. All right, Senator, have a great holiday. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Bye-bye. Yep, bye.
All right. And thank you for joining us today here on FRC Media. I'm Keith Tebow. Have a great day.